Change the world? Inspire people? Do you seriously believe in that nonsense at your age? A rundown factory like yours produces nothing but garbage. Those words pierced my heart, sending chills down my spine. I had taken over my father's factory, confident in the technology we produced. Yet it was dismissed as worthless. And the one who said it was none other than Mr. Stevens, a key business partner. Rather than discussing contract renewal, he abruptly declared, "We're terminating our partnership. In fact, this is perfect timing. Let's cut off all ties. Don't ever come back." Saying this, Mr. Stevens leans back in his chair. With just a few words, he had crushed the future of Summit Manufacturing. I felt an overwhelming urge to lash out, but losing control here would ruin everything. My trembling fists clenched as I struggled to hold back my anger. "Mr. Stevens, please, anything but that. Like I care about the fate of a rundown factory. Get lost." His condescending attitude, not even bothering to glance at the documents I had prepared, left my mind blank. The words I had rehearsed over and over vanished into thin air. But little did we know, this bitter humiliation would later lead to an unbelievable comeback. My name is Alex Pierce. I run a small-town factory called Summit Manufacturing, a company my father built from the ground up. Summit Manufacturing was once highly regarded by local factories and businesses, and my father was a respected craftsman who supported the industry. Growing up watching my father, I developed a dream to create groundbreaking innovations that would benefit people. What I wanted to develop was a next-generation precision component that would achieve high performance while being environmentally friendly. A product with superior energy efficiency and low cost. I envisioned a patented technology that could revolutionize industries worldwide. Whenever I shared my ideas with my father, he would always smile and say, "Alex, as long as you don't give up, your dreams will come true. Just like I built this factory." He always believed in me, but last winter my father passed away. I inherited not only the factory, but also the title of president. I still remember how heavy the words President Alex Pierce felt on my business card. Even so, I couldn't abandon the dream my father had supported. No matter how small, a factory's technology plays a crucial role in supporting industries in daily life. That's why I vowed to protect and grow the company my father left behind. But the reality was harsh. Summit Manufacturing was facing serious challenges. To be honest, many of the veteran employees who had worked since my father's time were aging. Our equipment was also getting old. I wouldn't call it a wreck, but major maintenance and upgrades were inevitable. And I had no clear idea of how to secure the funds for it. Even with aging machines, skilled craftsmen could keep production going. I had always believed that. In fact, many of our veteran employees possessed incredible skills, carrying on the techniques my father had perfected. It was thanks to them that Summit Manufacturing had made it this far. But considering their age, I can't help but worry about how much longer they'll be able to keep working on site. I've tried several times to hire new graduates and young workers through job centers and online job listings. However, as a small-town factory, our benefits and reputation just can't compete with the big corporations. As a result, many of the young workers who do join end up leaving within a few years, making it hard to retain talent. On top of that, developing groundbreaking new technology requires significant investment. And right now, we simply don't have the financial strength to make that happen. We're barely managing to secure enough daily revenue to keep things running. Where should I even start? Every night, I found myself staring at my laptop, struggling to find a way forward. But even in those tough times, there was one thing that gave me a glimmer of hope: Sean, one of our young employees. Despite being in his early 20s, he had been fascinated with machines since childhood. He never hesitated to ask veteran craftsmen questions and was always eager to learn. He arrived early in the morning to clean the workshop, and before heading home, not only completed his daily reports but also wrote down his own ideas for improvements in a notebook. I had high hopes for Sean. Even the senior workers encouraged him, saying, "You've got real potential," while mentoring him, which helped create a more positive atmosphere in the factory. Sean was particularly interested in my vision for next-generation technology that could change the world. Whenever he saw me late at night, deep in CAD designs and simulations, he would eagerly ask, "Mr. Pierce, how does this new idea work?" His eyes sparkled, just like a child being given a brand new toy. "If we can complete this, it's going to be incredible." Wiping oil stains from his apron, he spoke with excitement. "I mean, if this bearing gets implemented, the efficiency of cars, rockets, and airplanes will skyrocket. If we can cut energy consumption to less than half of what it is now, people on the other side of the world might finally have access to easy transportation. It wouldn't just revolutionize industries, it could change the way people live. Just thinking about it gets me excited." He took a deep breath to calm himself before looking straight at me. "If this takes off, even a small-town factory like ours might attract visitors from overseas. The technology alone would be enough to generate buzz, and if that happens, we'd get orders from all over the world. We'd be incredibly busy, but wouldn't that be more exciting?" When he said that, I felt a deep warmth in my chest. If I could bring my ideas to life, it wouldn't just make people happy around the world, it would also allow the people working in this small factory to take pride in their jobs. The whole town could become more lively, new investments could create more jobs. Maybe we could build that kind of future starting right here. Exactly. And for me, that means I'd have an easier time helping with my little brother's tuition. Who knows? I might even be able to build a big house one day. If you entrust me with more responsibilities, I'll give it everything I've got. His words weren't just about money, his passion for using technology to improve people's lives shone through. That only made me want to support him even more. Seeing Sean working hard for his younger brother's future lit a fire in me, even though I still couldn't see the full picture of my own dreams. But reality wasn't so kind. The financial struggles didn't go away, work orders started to decline, and I was barely able to ensure that my employees got paid. I desperately sought bank loans and reached out to my connections, trying to secure higher-paying contracts. I wondered how my employees saw me in those moments. One day, Sean came into my office. Looking a little awkward, he held a piece of paper in his hands. It was a resignation letter. "Mr. Pierce, I'm quitting. I know you have a dream, but dreams alone won't put food on the table." His serious tone left me speechless. And as if following his lead, several other employees also submitted their resignations. They must have felt uneasy about the company's financial situation or struggled to keep up with my development-first mindset. I felt my heart crack, but all I could do was silently accept their letters. Sean's departure hit me the hardest. Losing a hardworking young talent felt like losing a piece of the future. Still, I told them, I understand. I wanted to respect their choices. "It's your life. I can't hold you back." But my voice trembled with helplessness. As I stared at the pile of resignation letters on my desk, I sat there in a daze. With so many employees leaving at once, we didn't have enough hands to keep the machines running. Let alone developing my dream product, I no longer had the capacity to keep the factory going. "Mr. Pierce." Just then, Sophie, our office clerk, spoke up. Sophie was a serious woman, always wearing simple, monochrome outfits and a pair of thin-framed glasses. Some employees called her plain, but I never thought so. Her administrative work was always precise and efficient. To me, she shone brightly. "I'm staying. There may be only so much I can do, but I'll make sure to be useful. Because I believe in your dream, Mr. Pierce." I was taken aback when she said that. To be honest, I had never thought of her beyond her excellent work performance. But the unwavering determination in her eyes gave me a sense of relief. "Thank you." I couldn't say anything more. My chest tightened with emotion, making it impossible to speak. I felt guilty about placing the weight of my oversized dream and the factory's future on Sophie's small shoulders. Yet I couldn't ignore the deep gratitude I felt for having someone stand by my side. So, while continuing to fulfill daily orders, I stayed in the factory late into the night, working on development. The product I was striving to create was a high-performance thrust bearing. It might seem like an insignificant component, but it had the potential to be used in demanding applications, from industrial machinery and automobiles to space exploration. It would maximize rotational efficiency while minimizing wear and failure, even in extreme conditions. And with just a few tweaks to common materials and production lines, it could be mass-produced at a low cost. If I could bring this ultimate bearing to life, it would undoubtedly attract global attention. I spent countless sleepless nights designing and prototyping. At first, nothing worked as planned, even when following my blueprints precisely. Precision machining errors, material heat treatment adjustments, there were endless hurdles to overcome. But I kept testing, going back to the drawing board whenever defects appeared, identifying their causes, and making improvements. Sophie, too, sacrificed her sleep to help with document preparation and other administrative support. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to handle the paperwork and external negotiations amid the chaos. Then one night, the bearing I installed in the test machine finally delivered the results I had been dreaming of. It rotated with astonishing smoothness, and even after repeated testing, it showed almost no signs of failure. Though it was still a prototype, the moment I saw the data reflected on the graph, I felt chills run down my spine. "It's finished." As I muttered those words, an overwhelming emotion welled up inside me, forcing me to turn away in an attempt to hold back tears. After a moment, Sophie gently picked up the prototype. "Mr. Pierce, congratulations. This marks a new future for Summit Manufacturing. Yeah, this technology carries the hopes of my father and everyone else." I nodded. If you don't give up, dreams can come true. At that moment, I felt like I had proven that with my own hands. A few days after completing the high-performance thrust-bearing prototype, I gathered my courage and headed to Mr. Stevens Technologies, a major automotive company in the city. Mr. Stevens Technologies had been a business partner since my father's time. If they took an interest in my technology, it could open the door to a massive sales channel. "Mr. Pierce, you're way too tense," Sophie whispered with a small laugh beside me, wearing a touch of makeup more polished than usual. I gave a wry smile and shrugged. How could I not be? If I mess this up, there might not be a next time. As we completed the check-in process and waited in the reception room, I kept going over my documents. The advantages of my bearing, the key points of its special processing, how it could be mass-produced cost-effectively, and the impact it could have on the world. I rehearsed my presentation over and over in my head. The meeting would include Travis Stevens, the president of Stevens Technologies. He had recently taken over as president, and rumors said he was ruthless about cutting ties with suppliers he deemed unnecessary. Stevens Technologies was one of our main business partners. To keep that relationship intact, I had to sell this technology at all costs. As I sipped my coffee in the quiet reception room, the sound of heavy footsteps approached, and the door swung open. Among the suited men who entered the room, the one at the front was undoubtedly Mr. Stevens. He exhaled sharply through his nose with a scoff, humph, his eyes keen and his chin slightly jutted upward. "My time is valuable. Keep it brief." His rude attitude irked me, but losing my temper now wouldn't get us anywhere. "Thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today," I said, bowing before immediately opening my materials to begin the presentation. "Our company has developed this thrust bearing, which reduces friction by approximately 30% compared to conventional bearings. Furthermore, with only minor modifications to existing production lines, it can maintain high durability while keeping costs low." I spoke passionately, showing the data and diagrams I had prepared. Seeing everything laid out like this, I was reminded of just how much time and effort had gone into this project. Sophie supported me by writing key points on the whiteboard, her calm and composed demeanor helping me stay focused. The presentation seemed to be going smoothly. In the future, the demand will be for technology that delivers high performance while being environmentally conscious, energy efficient, cost-effective, and long-lasting. This bearing meets all those criteria. If implemented, it could revolutionize not only the automotive industry, but also satellite technology, space exploration, and even the core components of massive industrial plants. I leaned forward slightly, speaking with enthusiasm about my vision for the future. A small-town factory possessing such groundbreaking technology, who wouldn't get excited by that? That's why we want to use your company's resources and network to bring this bearing to the world. I want this technology to inspire people to change the future. With those passionate words, I bowed deeply and waited for their response. Please consider our proposal, Sophie added, bowing as well. We had conveyed our passion. At least, I wanted to believe that. But the silence was broken by Mr. Stevens' cold, cutting remark. Humph. What's with all that grand talk? Isn't all you have just a rundown factory with ancient machines? His eyes gleamed with ridicule. Some of his subordinates chuckled quietly. They looked at us as if we were naive children caught up in a ridiculous fantasy. Yes, we're a small factory, I responded, struggling to keep my voice steady. But the data doesn't lie. No other bearing on the market achieves this level of performance. Before I could finish, Mr. Stevens raised his hand, cutting me off. Relax. Let me be blunt. Your technology won't cut it by our standards. No track record, no money, no decent equipment. Why would we waste our time promoting a product from a company like yours? Mr. Stevens doesn't even bother to look at the documents and just snorts as he says this. That's not. I heard Sophie whisper faintly beside me. But Mr. Stevens continued, mercilessly piling on his words. You talk about changing the world and inspiring people? Do you seriously believe that nonsense? A rundown factory's products are nothing but garbage. His words stabbed deep into my chest, leaving my mind blank. Was it really so foolish to dream? Even though I had poured everything into developing this technology, even though I had the data to prove its worth, he dismissed it outright. No, maybe this was simply the harsh reality of the business world. But it was too frustrating to accept. Bringing me this garbage actually worked out well. I was planning to cut ties with your company anyway. As of today, all contracts with your factory are terminated. What? Please wait. If we lose our contract with Stevens Technologies, we won't be able to stay in business. Your factory's survival isn't my concern. Now get out. His words cut through me like a knife. But at the same time, I knew that letting my emotions take over now would mean losing everything. Please, Mr. Stevens, I beg you. Just give us one more chance to be considered. I forced the words out, my throat tightening. I pressed both hands firmly onto the scattered documents on the table and bowed deeply. I won't deny that our factory is small and outdated, but what we've developed is different. If you just look at the data, at the actual test results, you'll see that we're telling the truth. But Mr. Stevens didn't even glance at the documents. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, letting out a tired sigh. How many times do I have to say it? A small factory with no money and no equipment has nothing we need. Your so-called innovation is just a pipe dream. This can't be happening. My voice cracked without meaning to. I wanted to convince him so badly, but it was like talking to a brick wall. I bit my lip, trying to push forward, but Mr. Stevens raised his hand impatiently. Know when to quit. We don't have time to pick up trash. My clenched fists trembled. I wanted to fight back, to keep pushing. I wasn't ready to give up yet. But then, I noticed Sophie looking up at me with worried eyes, and I forced myself to hold back. Understood. I squeezed out the words and bowed deeply. Thank you for your time. We'll take our leave. My eyelids burned. Walking away like this felt humiliating, and it made it hard to breathe. I gently tapped Sophie's shoulder and whispered, "Let's go." As we walked down the hallway, frustration and helplessness built up inside me, and I struggled to hold back the tears. "Mr. Pierce, please don't lose heart." Sophie's voice was gentle, but I couldn't find the words to respond. The heavy silence followed us as we left the company. In the taxi on the way to the station, neither of us spoke. What's so wrong about having a dream? I repeated those words in my mind over and over. But maybe for a small-town factory like mine, getting crushed by the realities of the business world was inevitable. Back at the factory, I remained in a deep slump. I felt lost, unsure of my next move. No matter how advanced our technology was, without financial backing and a proven track record, the big players wouldn't even give us a chance. Sophie must have noticed my state because she quietly handed me a cup of warm coffee. As I wrapped my hands around the steaming mug, a small part of me relaxed. But the frustration still lingered. Mr. Stevens just didn't see the true value of this technology. At least, that's what I want to believe. When I voiced my honest feelings, Sophie's expression turned serious. She met my gaze directly. "Mr. Pierce, actually, I have a connection." "A connection?" I asked, puzzled. To be honest, no matter what lead she had, it probably wouldn't compare to a company like Stevens Technologies. But her eyes held a firm resolve. I had no idea what kind of company it was. But I didn't care. I would grasp at anything. Trying to pull myself out of despair, I placed a hand gently on Sophie's shoulder. "Thank you. I really appreciate it. If there's a way forward, I want to take it. I can't let my dream end here." Sophie's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she smiled. "Mr. Pierce, you will succeed. Please let me help you." Her warmth slowly thawed the weight pressing down on my heart. And in that moment, I realized something. No matter how much the big corporations looked down on me, I still had people who believed in me. As long as Sophie stood by my side, encouraging me with those unwavering eyes, I could keep fighting. I'm not going to let Mr. Stevens have the last word. It's time to start over. With that, I drained my coffee. The bitter taste filled my mouth, reminding me of the tough road ahead. But beyond the bitterness, I knew there had to be a hint of sweetness waiting. With that belief, Sophie and I began preparing for our second chance. The taxi Sophie directed me into took us to an unexpected destination, the headquarters of Keystone Motors, a major automobile manufacturer. This company was a direct competitor to Stevens Technologies. As I stepped out, I couldn't hide my astonishment at the sight before me, the massive glass entrance doors, the luxurious red carpet in the lobby, and the strict security guards watching everything closely. "Sophie, do you really have a connection in a company this big?" I couldn't help but ask. Sophie gave me a small, knowing smile. "Yes, I have a bit of a connection." Sophie only answered like that and seemed to hesitate somewhat, as if she was hiding some important secret. I wanted to press her for details, but right now I had no choice but to trust her and follow her lead. After completing the check-in process, we were led to a reception room on the top floor. The breathtaking cityscape visible through the massive windows made me instinctively straighten my posture. As I anxiously waited, a woman in an elegant suit entered the room, followed by several men. "Sophie, it's been a while. I never expected you to come here." The woman at the front spoke directly to Sophie, fixing her gaze on her. "Katie, it's been a long time." Sophie's expression tensed as she bowed slightly. At that moment, I was taken aback and couldn't help but swallow my words. The woman Sophie had called Katie stood before me. "So, my sister has been under your care, I see. I'm Katie. I serve as the Executive Vice President of Keystone Motors. And just to be clear, I didn't get this position because my father is the president. I earned it." "Wait, your father is the president?" "Of course. Didn't Sophie tell you? I glanced at Sophie, who lowered her eyes, looking embarrassed. The quiet, unassuming office worker I had worked alongside all this time was the daughter of the president of a massive corporation? The realization hit me so hard that my mind went blank for a moment. My name is Alex Pierce from Summit Manufacturing. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. I quickly gathered myself and bowed deeply. However, Katie let out a short, amused breath and cast a condescending look at Sophie. You've been so secretive that I thought you had cut ties with the family. You were always a plain girl, but I never imagined you'd choose such a dull, insignificant life. Her words were so harsh that I doubted my ears for a moment. Sophie remained silent, simply biting her lip. Seeing this, Katie smirked even more. And to think, after leaving home, you ended up working at some rundown little factory. A factory with no future. What kind of productivity could such a place possibly have? Isn't it just a waste of time and money? She spoke as if our factory was beneath her. Her condescending attitude irritated me. But before I could speak, Sophie lifted her head. A small flame of determination burned in her eyes. Katie, that's not fair. Yes, Summit Manufacturing is a small factory, but it's where I've learned so much. She took a deep breath. I wanted to work somewhere without the burdens of family ties, which is why I avoided Keystone Motors. But everywhere I went, I was labeled as plain or unremarkable and struggled to find a job. Summit Manufacturing was the only company that gave me a chance. Alex was the only one who never called me plain. She glanced at me for a moment, offering a small, awkward smile. During my interview, Alex shared his dream with me. He wanted to create next-generation precision components that were both high-performance and environmentally friendly. He bowed his head and asked for my support. Seeing his passion was inspiring, and I wanted to help him achieve his dream. I may be plain, but precisely because I am, I believe I can support someone as bright as Alex. That has become my dream. I felt a warmth spread in my chest. I had no idea Sophie thought about me and my dream that way. But Katie only sighed, shaking her head in exasperation. You're spouting nonsense. It seems listening to you too any longer is a waste of my time. Saying that, Katie quickly tried to get up from her seat. I quickly raised my voice. Wait a minute. You can't decide it's a waste without even seeing the technology. Sophie, would you explain it to her? Sophie turned to me, eyes wide in surprise. I've never done a presentation before. She hesitated, her words faltering. I placed my hand gently on Sophie's shoulder and looked into her eyes with determination. Listen, I know this for a fact. Without you, this high-performance thrust bearing would never have been completed. You weren't just handling office work. You've been supporting me all this time. Show them your knowledge and effort with confidence. Just like you helped me, help them understand how incredible this technology is. Sophie's lips trembled slightly as she took in my words. Then, she closed her eyes for a brief moment. All right, I'll do it. Her expression was resolute. She stepped forward, and in that instant, it was as if she had transformed into a different person. Her voice was steady and clear. This bearing reduces wear by approximately 30% compared to conventional models. Though calm, her voice carried a quiet intensity. Pointing to a graph on the presentation board, she logically laid out the key aspects. The crucial factor is the material combination we've developed to counteract thermal expansion. Even under high temperatures, which typically accelerate wear, dimensional stability is maintained, ensuring prolonged rotational efficiency. Furthermore, she switched to the next slide and gave a small nod as if reassuring herself. Bearings are the foundation of all machinery. If we can revolutionize this component, it could drive innovation across industries, automobiles, aviation, even space development. We didn't just test this in a lab. We conducted extensive operational trials in real manufacturing environments. That's why I firmly believe this technology holds the key to the future. When she finished, her breathing was slightly uneven, but her conviction remained unwavering. We hope you will believe in its potential. Right now, with the right support, we can take this even further. Her final words carried a force that seemed to shake the air in the room. Sophie's honesty, combined with her unwavering belief in this technology's future, spread through the space like a ripple. Katie, who had been listening, stared at her sister in astonishment. I clenched my fist under the table, celebrating silently. At the very least, we had proven that our technology was not something to be laughed off. This concludes our presentation. Do you have any questions? As soon as Sophie posed the question, the executives around the table began firing inquiries at her. She answered each one logically and concisely. Just then, the conference room door opened and another figure entered. He was a man of imposing presence, his calm demeanor hiding a sharp intellect. "Father, thank you for your time." Katie stood up hastily and bowed. The other executives immediately straightened their postures in unison. I immediately understood this was Thompson, the president of Keystone Motors and Sophie's father. Relax. I was listening to Sophie's presentation from outside. With an easygoing stride, Mr. Thompson approached the table and turned his gaze towards Sophie and me, his expression warm but piercing. "So, you're Mr. Pierce of Summit Manufacturing. I've heard you possess remarkable technology for someone so young." The way he holds out his hand as he says this is very friendly and warm. His atmosphere is the complete opposite of Katie. As I shook his hand, still in shock, he picked up my documents and prototype with visible interest. "Oh, this is fascinating. Even major manufacturers struggle to produce a low-friction bearing of this caliber. And you've even considered the feasibility of mass production. Impressive, truly impressive." At his words, Katie visibly stiffened. The confidence she had displayed earlier vanished, and her eyes widened in disbelief. "Mr. Thompson, but the product hasn't undergone precise verification yet. Wouldn't it be risky to proceed so quickly?" She attempted to argue, but Mr. Thompson simply waved a hand dismissively. "Come now, Katie. I believe in supporting passionate engineers. Of course, investment comes with risks, but that's what business is all about." After saying that, he then looked directly at me. Although he is smiling, his gaze is serious. "Mr. Pierce, let us invest in your technology. Tell me what support you need to bring this innovation to its full potential." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The head of a major corporation was not only acknowledging my technology but offering his full backing. A surge of exhilaration filled me, nearly overwhelming me to the point of speechlessness. Beside me, Sophie gave a small nod, her expression filled with quiet pride. Mr. Thompson then turned his attention to Sophie. "Sophie, I'm glad you came today. You were always the youngest, and you grew up doubting yourself. But deep down, haven't you always had dreams of your own?" Sophie bit her lip in pain at Mr. Thompson's words. Katie watched the scene unfold with an uncomfortable expression. "I'm sorry. I was so caught up in my role as company president that I never took the time to listen to your struggles. Seeing you step out into the world and accomplish something so remarkable. I have to admit, Sophie, I'm surprised, but more than anything, I'm proud of you." At those gentle words, tears welled up in Sophie's eyes and spilled over. I had the urge to reach out and place a comforting hand on her back, but I held myself back. "And as for you, Mr. Pierce, Sophie may be clumsy in her own way, but she has a kind heart. While working at your factory, she found her own sense of value. Thank you, you saved her." I hesitated, caught off guard by his gratitude. "I didn't do anything. She just worked hard alongside me." "Don't be so modest. Because you believed in her, she was able to grow." Mr. Thompson replied to my words with a smile. And then I see Sophie again. "Sophie, I am proud of you. It doesn't matter if you're the youngest. Hold your head high and walk your own path." At those words, Sophie nodded repeatedly, sobbing softly. The silence that followed was broken by Katie. The intimidating presence she had earlier was completely gone. Now she looked down slightly, struggling to find the right words. Sophie, I realize now that I've always looked down on you, thinking of you as my incompetent little sister. I never even bothered to truly listen to you. I'm sorry. I was so focused on proving my own worth that I never stopped to consider what you wanted. But I never expected you to deliver such a passionate presentation. And, Mr. Pierce, I owe you an apology as well. I treated you unfairly. Saying that, Katie turned to me and bowed deeply. In response, I bowed as well. It's all right. I trusted that Sophie wouldn't introduce me to someone who wouldn't listen seriously. When I looked back at Sophie, she was wiping her tears away, smiling. Thank you, Katie. I've always wanted you to acknowledge me. Katie's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she nodded. It felt as if years of family tension were finally unraveling, filling the room with a sense of peace. Watching it all, I felt a deep warmth spread through my chest. With Thompson's decisive and generous support, discussions about investment moved forward at an astonishing pace. The fact that a single signature could change everything so quickly was almost unbelievable. But that was the power of a major corporation. Alex, this is incredible. Sophie whispered beside me, smiling. Though the traces of her earlier tears remained, her expression was bright and full of relief. The incredible one is your father, and you're the one who got me here. I'm just a small-town factory owner. I scratched my head, embarrassed. But Sophie shook her head. No, Alex, you are incredible. That's why my father decided to invest in you. Exactly. Mr. Thompson, who had been listening, nodded firmly. You may not realize it, but the technology you brought to us, it's something even our own R&D department has been struggling with. To be honest, we were nowhere near a solution. Then you showed up with a fully functional prototype. There's no way I could overlook that. Mr. Thompson looks at the documents with a smile on his face. I slowly move my eyes over the number written on it, savoring every last detail. Of course, you've already filed for a patent, haven't you? If not, you should finalize it immediately. Brilliant technology tends to attract competition. Yes, we're already in the process. We're waiting for the review, but we can't afford to let our guard down yet. Good. It may take time, but if needed, our legal team can assist. If you run into any issues, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. Hearing this, Katie and her colleagues exchanged glances, now discussing the technology in a completely different tone. The friction and durability figures really are impressive. The more I hear, the more I see potential applications in our own development. It was almost amusing how quickly their attitude had shifted. But that was the nature of business. Either way, our technology now had the backing of a major corporation. More importantly, Sophie had reconciled with her family and proven her worth, not just to them, but to herself. Sophie, our factory is about to get really busy. Are you ready for that? I teased lightly, grinning. Her eyes sparkled as she laughed. Of course, Alex. I'll do my best to keep up. Her enthusiasm made Mr. Thompson and even Katie smile as well. The cityscape stretching beyond the wide reception room windows looked as if it was urging me forward into this new chapter of my life. Narrowing my eyes, I silently declared to myself, this is where the real battle begins. Beside me, Sophie wore a beautiful smile. One day, as the development of our high-performance thrust bearing was finally gaining momentum, the factory doors burst open. The person who stepped in was someone I hadn't seen in months, Sean, the young worker who had once left Summit Manufacturing. There was a worn-out look on his face, a shadow of exhaustion lingering in his eyes. Mr. Pierce, can I come back? His voice was quiet but filled with desperation, as if he had struggled to push the words out. A few months ago, he had left saying, "Dreams alone won't put food on the table," before placing his resignation letter on my desk and walking away. I still remembered the frustration in his back as he left. So now, seeing him standing here, head bowed, asking to return, it both surprised me and stirred something deep in my chest. "Why do you want to come back?" I asked calmly. Sean bit his lip, his voice trembling as he struggled to answer. No matter where I went, I couldn't find anything I really wanted to do. And that's when I realized. What I was drawn to all along wasn't just the job, it was your passion for manufacturing, Mr. Pierce. I'm sorry for leaving like that. Please, would you give me another chance? As he kept his head down, I could feel how much this meant to him. Around us, murmurs of disapproval rose. He left on his own, and now he wants back in. What if he just quits again? Even Sophie glanced at me hesitantly, uncertain. But I met her gaze briefly before slowly nodding. "Sean, if you truly want a fresh start, I won't turn you away. Come back, this place is still your home." The factory fell silent, then erupted in murmurs of disbelief. "Mr. Pierce, that's too generous. What if he walks out again?" I understood their concerns, but my mind was set. It's fine. Everyone makes mistakes. People get lost sometimes. But if someone is willing to come back and move forward with us, isn't that more valuable than holding on to resentment? Tears welled up in Sean's eyes as he bowed deeply. "Thank you. I swear I'll give it my all." A warmth spread through my chest. Summit Manufacturing might be small, but it was a place where people could believe in each other. A place where companions pursued their dreams together, and their bonds gave them great strength. A week later, on a hectic morning, Sophie stormed into the office, her face pale. "Alex, this is bad. I was checking a news site just now, and it says Mr. Stevens is about to unveil a revolutionary bearing technology, and it sounds exactly like ours." "What?" My voice cracked in shock. Mr. Stevens, the same man who had dismissed us so cruelly and severed our contract without a second thought. The article claims it's independently developed, but when I read the description, it matches our design too closely. So I did some digging, and I found traces of unauthorized access on our company computers after work hours. I think someone stole our data. Sophie's hands trembled as she spread out printed reports across the table, her breath quick with urgency. Her panic only reinforced how dire this situation was. Who the hell? I clenched my fists in frustration. I instinctively wanted to slam the desk, but I stopped myself and shook my head, telling myself to stay calm. Even Sophie seems unusually shaken. If things continue like this, it could make the situation worse. "Mr. Pierce, what do we do? If they announce it first, they could take the patent. They'll claim all our hard work as theirs? That bastard Stevens." Angry voices filled the room. The factory was in chaos. The thought of having our years of sweat, blood, and sacrifice stolen from us was unbearable. Mr. Stevens was never going to let us go so easily. Sean also had a bitter expression and bit his lip. If Mr. Stevens launches his product first, a large-scale promotion will boost his company's reputation significantly. We would be left behind, and even securing a formal patent application might become difficult. "Alex, is there really nothing we can do?" Sophie's voice carried a sense of urgency. I felt a tight grip deep in my chest and clenched my lips. However, despite everything, I wasn't entirely consumed by despair. Because I had a certain conviction. "Everyone stay calm, it'll be fine." At my words, the employees turned to me with surprised expressions. "Alex, what do you mean? How can this be fine?" Sophie looked unconvinced, but I smiled at her. "Even if Mr. Stevens announces his product first, we still have an ace up our sleeve. The key is to stay composed and assess the situation carefully." Then I explained our trump card to everyone. Though skepticism still lingered on their faces, a faint sense of relief began to appear. "Alex, I'll support you too." Sophie nodded firmly and made her declaration. A few days later, Just as the news reported, Mr. Stevens held a grand press conference to unveil his next-generation bearing technology. The event took place in a large rented hall with many media representatives and industry insiders in attendance. Standing proudly, Mr. Stevens grabbed the microphone and began speaking while projecting blueprints and data onto a giant screen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a revolutionary bearing that will change the world. Our company has independently developed an ultra-low friction, high-durability solution that defies conventional wisdom. Watching his arrogant smile on the live broadcast, my chest tightened with frustration and anxiety. But in the next moment, the atmosphere in the hall shifted dramatically. The test machine, which was supposed to demonstrate the product, emitted a strange noise just a few minutes after activation and abruptly stopped. "What is this?" Mr. Stevens frantically gave orders to his staff, but the murmurs in the audience wouldn't die down. Then, one of the reporters raised a sharp question. "Mr. Stevens, it seems your bearing has malfunctioned. Would you still call it ultra-durable?" The gathered journalists pressed further, while Mr. Stevens stammered, "This is just a minor calibration issue," repeatedly, but his unconvincing words only fueled the uneasy atmosphere. However, the lack of clarity and the uneasy atmosphere in the venue are now beyond repair. Just then, Mr. Thompson and I appeared side by side through the modestly opened door to the hall. The media instantly turned their attention to us. "Mr. Stevens, the bearing you just unveiled is actually stolen technology from Summit Manufacturing, my factory." "What are you talking about? Do you have any proof?" Mr. Stevens' eyes darted around in panic, but I remained composed as I spoke. "Yes, here are our prototype data, process sheets, and copies of our pending patent application. The key to making this bearing highly durable lies in a specific surface treatment and finishing process. But in the blueprints you stole, that final step is missing. That's why it broke so easily." The press instantly began snapping photos of the documents in my hands. Sweat visibly formed on Mr. Stevens' forehead. Murmurs filled the hall. "Stolen technology? If this is true, it's a huge scandal. In other words, you presented incomplete data as your original development. Unfortunately for you, even if you had the full process, using our technology without permission constitutes infringement. There's no point in trying to cover it up any further." At my harsh words, Mr. Stevens could no longer argue. As the hall erupted in chaos, his hand, still gripping the microphone, dropped limply as his gaze fell to the floor. The camera flashes continued, capturing his pitiful state for all to see. "If this is true, will you be pursuing legal action?" "Yes. From this point forward, we will only communicate through our attorneys. I suggest you prepare accordingly." At my firm statement, the reporters buzzed with even greater intensity. Cornered with no excuses left, Mr. Stevens muttered weakly, "It's a misunderstanding. My employees acted on their own." But no one was listening anymore. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat lightly and stepped forward. "The machine's failure just now is proof enough. Summit Manufacturing's bearings require a critical surface treatment and finishing process, even before mass production. Skipping those steps drastically increases wear and tear. Without knowing the full process, announcing it prematurely was bound to end in failure." The hall instantly erupted in murmurs and countless camera flashes flickered. "This is going to be a huge scandal." Mr. Thompson glanced at the defective prototype sitting on stage like a prop, then gave a slight shrug. "Now, since we shouldn't dwell on unfortunate topics, let me share some good news. We at Keystone Motors have officially decided to adopt the outstanding technology developed by Mr. Pierce and Summit Manufacturing for our future product development. We are launching a joint project immediately with the goal of creating innovations that will change the world." The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically, followed by a wave of excited murmurs. As the flashes rained down once again, Mr. Stevens was completely pushed out of focus, left standing in silence with no comeback. "Mr. Pierce, let's move forward together. With our financial resources and network, Summit Manufacturing's technology will truly flourish." At Mr. Thompson's resolute words, I gave a deep bow. Beside me, Sophie was smiling, her eyes glistening with emotion. Yes, we will exceed expectations. We'll take Summit Manufacturing's dream and expand it to the world. I declared this with conviction, my fist still tightly gripping the decisive evidence. Mr. Stevens' act of theft had been fully exposed. There was no escape for him now. This is where the real battle begins. Exchanging a determined gaze with Mr. Thompson, I silently vowed to see this through. A few hours later, after leaving the chaotic press conference, we had a brief meeting with Keystone Motors representatives before returning to Summit Manufacturing by the evening. In the factory's break area, a small TV monitor sat on a table surrounded by employees who were buzzing with excitement. Apparently, the news was broadcasting footage from the press conference on a large scale. On the screen, a close-up of Mr. Stevens' pale, downcast face filled the frame. Mr. Pierce, perfect timing. They're showing the moment when Mr. Stevens completely screwed up. Hey, is that so? Glancing at the excited young employee, I turned my eyes to the TV monitor. I stood there with my employees, watching the footage unfold. Seeing Mr. Stevens make such a big mistake, people around me laughed and said, "Serves you right." But still, how did our information get leaked? The casual remark from someone in the crowd momentarily silenced the chatter in the break room. The employees exchanged uncertain glances. Honestly, there's no way they could have stolen such pinpoint data without someone from the inside. An older employee murmured, and instantly the air turned cold. An internal leak. The moment that thought crossed everyone's mind, the room's atmosphere grew heavy. If there was a traitor among us, the mere suspicion made people tense up, their gazes shifting cautiously. As the mood grew increasingly uncomfortable, I noticed someone standing motionless in the dimly lit corner of the room. It was Sean. Normally, he would have been the first to rush over with an enthusiastic, "That was amazing," but today he was silent, staring at the floor. "Sean?" At the sound of my voice, he flinched. The others noticed and turned their attention toward him. Sean bit his lip, his expression pained. "Mr. Pierce, He started to speak but quickly shut his mouth again. His fists were clenched, his eyes darting around anxiously as if struggling to find the courage. His hesitation only fueled the worst possibilities in my mind. "I'm sorry, it was me. I leaked the information." Under the weight of everyone's cold stares, he finally bowed his head in resignation. I have a younger brother. We've always struggled with money. I left Summit Manufacturing saying dreams alone wouldn't feed me, but I couldn't find another job. Then Mr. Stevens approached me. He offered me a huge sum in exchange for the data on our high-performance bearings. And I took the deal. His words, choked with subs, left the employees wearing conflicted expressions. Anger was there, but so was the struggle to condemn him outright after hearing about his circumstances. Sophie clenched her hands tightly, looking at Sean with a pained expression. "I'm truly sorry. I just wanted to provide for my little brother. I needed money. I'm the worst kind of person." As he spoke, Sean crumpled to the ground, his face filled with despair. His shoulders trembled uncontrollably. In the tense silence that followed, I stepped toward him and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sean, I knew from the beginning that you were the one leaking information." "What?" The air in the factory grew even more strained. Sean, who had kept his head down since the moment his name was mentioned, still couldn't bring himself to look up. "Mr. Pierce, how?" His voice wavered, as if something was caught in his throat. I let out a deep breath. "The other night, I saw you sneaking into the factory. It wasn't during your scheduled hours, and you were sitting in front of a computer, searching for something. It seemed suspicious." Sean's head shot up, and I could see beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The employees around us collectively held their breath. "Of course, I didn't confront you right away. There was a chance you had a legitimate reason, and I knew how hard you were working to support your brother. But when Mr. Stevens suddenly announced his so-called groundbreaking new product at just the right time, I was sure of it. You had passed our technology to someone." Sean bit his lip. His eyes darted to the floor, his mouth opening slightly as if to protest, but no words came out. So just in case, I had already swapped out the critical data. The most important details, such as the final surface treatment and finishing parameters, were hidden in separate files. I also checked the computer logs. You were the only one who accessed that fake data. Ah. Sean staggered back a few steps, his face twisted in distress. The employees murmured among themselves, the tension in the room thickening. I lowered my gaze slightly and continued, keeping my voice as calm as possible. That's exactly why Stevens Technologies failed so spectacularly at their press conference. They used the incomplete process I had planted, which caused their bearing to break almost immediately. To be honest, I never expected to protect our technology this way. Silence fell over the room. Sean's shoulders shook violently. The other employees seemed torn, unsure whether to blame him or pity him. But no matter what, the truth was now out in the open. "Mr. Pierce, Sean was trying to squeeze out the words, but I didn't let him finish. I slowly raised my hand to stop him from speaking. "I understand. You had your reasons, you wanted to support your brother. But that doesn't justify stealing company secrets. However, I'm not going to abandon you. If you truly want to make things right, then prove it by working honestly from now on." At those words, Sean finally collapsed onto his knees. With his face buried in his hands, he sobbed silently, his tears hitting the floor. "I'm the worst. I'm so sorry." One act of betrayal had nearly put the entire company in danger. Yet, seeing how much Sean regretted his actions, I decided to give him a chance. If he was willing to start over, I wouldn't shut the door on him. "Sean, never do something like this again. Earn your money the right way, so you can go home proud and provide for your brother with integrity. That's what you need to do now." The other employees remained silent, watching Sean. They knew his skills as an engineer, which made it difficult to completely cast him aside. As the heavy atmosphere settled over the factory, I straightened my back and addressed everyone. "All right, let's take a breather. Our job isn't just to protect this factory, we need to keep growing it. There are still many challenges ahead, but we safeguarded our technology. That's a major victory. To move forward, we need to clear our heads." One employee murmured, "Yeah," and slowly stood up. Sean remained on the floor, but I knew he wouldn't run away anymore. We can all move forward together again. With that belief in my heart, I turned away, ready to take on the next challenge. 1 week later. As the disastrous press conference replayed on national news, Stevens Technologies rapidly lost credibility. Their stock price plummeted, and major business partners began terminating contracts one after another. Financial institutions froze their loans, making a cash flow crisis inevitable. I never thought it would end like this. The once arrogant Mr. Stevens was nowhere to be seen, not even at his own company's entrance. After a board meeting, Mr. Stevens was dismissed on the spot, and Stevens Technologies effectively went bankrupt. As the bankruptcy procedures progressed, employees began to scatter, leaving one after another. The once proud corporate headquarters now stood eerily silent, like an abandoned ruin. As for Mr. Stevens himself, he disappeared from the public eye after being heavily criticized. However, a small article later appeared in a weekly magazine titled "Former Mr. Stevens Reflects on His Mistakes." It mentioned that he had found a job under a different name at a small factory, working from morning until night. If only he had put in real effort sooner. According to the brief article, he was now relearning the fundamentals of manufacturing, trying to make amends for his past. It seemed he still held on to hopes of making a comeback someday, but at least this time, he wasn't looking for an easy way out. Shortly after the Mr. Stevens case was settled, Sean ran up to me while tidying up the factory. His shirt was rolled up, stained with grease, and sweat glistened on his forehead. "Mr. Pierce, I reorganized this week's production schedule. Can you take a look?" Holding up the document he had prepared on the computer, Sean looked at me with a determined gaze. Once, he had betrayed us, but now there was no trace of that darkness in him. "I see. Balancing large orders with prototype research will be tough, but this plan looks feasible." At my response, Sean puffed out his chest with a proud smile. "I swear I'll never betray you again. This time, I want to create something truly worth being proud of." There was no doubt in his voice. I placed the document on the desk and looked him in the eye. "I understand why you were desperate for your family. But don't you think chasing a dream together is better? I believe that with you on board, we can create something even greater than that high-performance bearing." Sean's eyes shone with determination. "Yes, if it's with you, Mr. Pierce, I know we can achieve anything." He bowed deeply, his enthusiasm filling the room. A warm feeling spread through my chest. And it wasn't just my company that was thriving. Keystone Motors, which had quickly integrated our technology, was also seeing a surge in sales. During a business meeting at their headquarters, Mr. Thompson approached me. "Mr. Pierce, thanks to you, our company is doing better than ever." "No, I should be the one thanking you. I truly appreciate Keystone Motors investing in us. Actually, our patent was just officially registered. Now, you can incorporate our bearings into your vehicles with complete confidence." At my words, Mr. Thompson's face lit up. "That's excellent news. Congratulations to both of us. And of course, to Sophie as well." While I was blushing and confused by his words, Mr. Thompson laughed with a good-natured look on his face and left the place. Just as I was left standing there, I heard the faint rustling of fabric behind me. Turning around, I saw Sophie. "You've worked hard, Alex, and I'm sorry about my father saying weird things." No, it wasn't weird at all, if anything. It made my heart race a little. Even I could hear the nervous tremor in my own voice. After all, when the president of Keystone Motors himself mentioned Sophie, how could I not be aware of it? Sophie gave a slightly awkward smile and took a step closer. The distance between us shrank. "But I'm relieved. Before, you were always so stiff around my father, like you were trying too hard." "Yeah, that's true. At first, just knowing he was Mr. Thompson of Keystone Motors made him seem unreachable. But now, thanks to you, I've gotten used to him. In fact, it feels like he's pushing me forward." As I spoke, my gaze naturally drifted to Sophie's gentle smile. "Alex." She lifted her face slightly. Behind her glasses, her eyes wavered softly, as if she had something important to say. The small movement made my heart pound. When I met her gaze without thinking, she bit her lip in confusion, then raised her head as if she had made up her mind. Then he gently grabbed my sleeve. "I know things will only get tougher from here. Expanding the factory, increasing our workforce, collaborating with my father. But I want to stay by your side and support this company. Even if I'm just a small office worker, I want to help in any way I can." Her voice was quiet, but filled with unwavering determination. "Just having you here helps me so much. If you weren't by my side, I don't think I would have made it this far. That's why. I want to keep protecting this factory together with you." As I said those words, I noticed Sophie's eyes glisten slightly. "Thank you, Alex." She smiled softly, a little bashfully. "Shall we head back to everyone? There's still a lot to do." "Yes, but once things settle down, can we talk again? Just the two of us?" At her quiet invitation, my heart pounded. "Of course, as much as you want. No matter how many times people laugh at me or how often I fail, as long as I never give up, the path I believe in will always open up. A dream only truly shines when you keep chasing it until it becomes reality." With that conviction in my heart, I knew I would keep moving forward for the rest of my life.